This is Kai. He had been completely average his entire life with ordinary grades and a boring job, but he hated that. So he begged us to give him every Bankai from Bleach. We're going to use real-life science to give him Ichigo's, Yamamoto's, even Aizen's secret Bankai, and so much more. However, each experiment is more dangerous than the last. They will gradually and creepily change his mind, and it's one of the most unsettling scientific phenomena in existence. But let's start with Byakuya. Byakuya's Bankai shatters his sword into countless deadly fragments that move together, shredding everything in their path. To recreate this Bankai, there is a massive problem. Countless fragments moving together means countless instructions are required to control them, and no human brain can handle that. But there is a bacteria called Myxococcus xanthus that solves this. It can hunt in coordinated swarms without a leader, because each bacteria follows two rules: stay near its neighbors and match their movement. There's also a phenomenon in nature where thousands of birds move like liquid across the sky, called a murmuration, and it's because of the same mechanism. However, we still need blades, so we bring in a second bacteria, Humanella onidensis, because it can absorb a carbon compound from the environment, strip away its oxygen, and leave behind a sheet of pure carbon, exactly 1 atom thick. This causes that sheet to be harder than diamonds, but thinner than a human hair, making it the sharpest blade in biology. Therefore, we engineer both of these bacteria in the Kai, allowing him to control hundreds of millions of microblades. But what happens if we give Kai more than one Bankai? Spoiler, it violates the laws of nature. Yamamoto's Bankai concentrates every flame he has into a single blade, hotter than the sun's core. Here's how we recreate it. There's a plant called the skunk cabbage that can melt snow around it in winter. This is because it has special cells, called thermogenic cells, that handle energy differently. Normally, the mitochondria takes raw energy and converts it into ATP, which acts like a battery. It's energy the body can store and use later. But the skunk cabbage reroutes this process, so the energy never becomes a battery at all. It just releases immediately as heat. So, we engineer a hyperdense version of these cells and concentrate them into Kai's arm. When he uses the Bankai, the heat causes surrounding air molecules to accelerate. Air stops being air and becomes plasma, the fourth state of matter, and is the same state the sun's core exists in. That plasma concentrating around Kai's arm creates the hottest blade in existence. However, the heat leaks into his bloodstream and brain. He starts forgetting what he ate for breakfast. Only the next Bankai could potentially save him. Rukia's Bankai drops the temperature of everything around her to absolute zero, the complete opposite of Yamamoto. But there's a massive problem we have to address first. The human brain can only juggle a certain number of things at once, like how a computer slows down when too many apps are open, and 2 Bankai is already past Kai's limit. We'll solve this with a secret technology later. Let's get back to Rukia. Here's how heat works. It's basically just atoms moving. The hotter something is, the faster its atoms move. So, when we drain heat away, those atoms slow down, eventually coming to a complete stop. Scientists call this a Bose-Einstein condensate, and it's the coldest state matter can exist in. Here's how we give Kai the ability to recreate this. Certain chemical reactions are endothermic, meaning they absorb heat from their surrounding. For example, instant ice packs. Therefore, we engineer Kai's cells to undergo endothermic reactions all at once. This causes his body to absorb heat from its surroundings, freezing it to near absolute zero. The cold also helps to neutralize the heat from the last chapter. However, Kai's brain is about to fry itself from coordinating too many Bankai. We'll fix this in the next chapter. Urahara's Bankai restructures anything it touches at the molecular level, like body parts and even terrain. But before that, here's how we fix Kai's coordination problem. We install a neural interface, a device that reads Kai's brain signals and executes commands faster than he can, allowing him to control multiple Bankai. Basically, something like a Neuralink. However, there's a very creepy side effect we'll explain later. Now, back to Urahara's Bankai. The closest thing we have in real science is CRISPR-Cas9, which are essentially molecular scissors. They can locate a precise point in someone's DNA and rewrite it. But CRISPR alone is too slow, because rewriting DNA takes hours to show any physical change. To fix this, we pair it with DNA origami, man-made strands of DNA folded into 3D shapes, because they can force surrounding proteins to reshape in milliseconds. So, we integrate the ability to control both CRISPR and DNA origami into Kai's body, allowing him to reshape matter at will. However, here's where it gets unsettling. The moment we connect the interface to Kai's brain, it identified a pattern in his decision making he never noticed himself. Ichigo's Bankai compresses all of his power into a single attack. This is the most human Bankai we're going to give Kai, and the science behind it starts inside your muscles. Every muscle in your body is made of tiny fibers, and the fastest ones are called Type 2X fast twitch fibers, built specifically for explosive movements. Inside each fiber, tiny structures called myosin motor proteins physically pull against each other to generate force, kinda like a tug of war. Therefore, we enhance this in Kai by weaving carbon nanotubes alongside those fibers. Carbon nanotubes are microscopic tubes of carbon that carry 100 times the strength of steel because their structure distributes force across every atom simultaneously. Now, Kai's muscles can produce 100 times the normal force. However, here's what makes it Ichigo's Bankai specifically. Kai can compress all of that force into a single point and unleash an earth-shattering attack, because the smaller the surface area, the higher the pressure. When we look back at the previous experiments, something is off. Kai's speech patterns have slowly changed since the beginning, and it's not the interface nor the heat from Yamamoto's Bankai. It seems to be something deeper. Aizen's Shikai makes anyone experience whatever he wants, with no way to tell it from reality. But how much more OP would this unrevealed Bankai be? To understand what it would do, you first need to understand how consciousness works. Your brain receives thousands of signals at once: color, movement, sound, all processed in different regions of the brain simultaneously. And the brain stitches all these signals into one coherent experience. That stitching is what we call reality. If you disrupt those fragments of reality, a person starts experiencing a different world. There is a phenomenon called visual entrainment, where flashing light at a specific frequency forces the brain to sync its own electrical waves to match it. Scientists use it to treat anxiety and insomnia. So, we engineer this ability into Kai's eyes using bioluminescent photophores, which are special light-producing cells found in deep-sea organisms. When Kai looks at someone, the photophores flash light at exactly the right frequency, forcing the target's brain to sync to that frequency, thus hijacking the stitching process in their brain. But here's where Kai's Bankai wins over Aizen's original Shikai. Aizen's Shikai has a weakness. It only works on people who have seen him release his blade. But Kai's version has no such condition. It works on anyone he looks at. A perfect, flawless version of Aizen's Shikai. Let's address all the strange phenomena happening to Kai. This is the situation. Every biological modification we made rewired what Kai's brain accepted as normal, while the interface narrowed what options even occurred to him. And to Kai, neither felt like interference, it just felt like its own thoughts. Here's why. In the 1960s, a scientist called Hans Kornhuber discovered that the brain fires a signal up to half a second before you decide on anything. So, every time Kai felt like he was making a choice, the interface had already made it before him. But here's what makes it permanent. The brain has a property called neuroplasticity. It physically rewires itself through repeated use. Every pathway the biological modifications and interface reinforced are now structurally baked into Kai's brain. Kai is finally an extraordinary person, but is he still himself?